Oh, my love. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I had to finish rocking out to a song before I hopped on here. I don't know how you party, but this is how I party. When I am gearing up for something, when I need to shift my energy, when I need to shake it up, I go to one of two playlists that my daughter and I have made on Spotify. One and what does she call it? Rocking out music. And she's getting into EDM, like electric dance music. So she's opening up some avenues for me. Anyway, I just had to belt it out and shake it out just a tiny bit. Elizabeth, you are my rock star. If I could give you stickers, I would give you stickers. You get the absolute attendance award, Elizabeth. Mwah. I was just rocking out to a song and I had to belt it out, and I was remembering our conversation yesterday about filling the well. And I don't think I shared how much music fills my well. It's unfortunate because every time I start to sing, my daughter's like, Mommy, please don't do that. Yeah, she loves to sing. She loves to dance. She might be a little bit better at it than I am, but I effing love it too. So it's nice when I get these tiny little moments where I get to shout from the living room. Um, so coming back, we are on day 4. Can you believe it? Day 4. Some of you have been watching live with me. Bless you, Elizabeth. Some of you have been catching the replays. Emma, you are my hashtag replay goddess. Bless you. And those of you who are popping in and catching up when you can, however it happens, folks who come to me are always like, this is exactly what I need exactly when I find it. So if it hasn't worked for you live, know that I know that it's waiting for you when it's exactly the right thing. We are on day 4. We have today and tomorrow, and then this session, this version of Unleashing Your Story is a wrap. Today we're going to dive in again, back into some ideas and some content, looking at the ingredients that you're going to be able to play with to make your exact recipe. And I think I was rocking out so much that I forgot to put my headphones in, which is why I can hear the rain so loudly. So I'm going to do that. Maybe brace yourself. My volume may change here just a second.
Okay. You can still hear me. All is good and groovy. So we're really looking, because the most important thing is that you have your recipe, that you have your system for your own success, that everybody's going to be different. Elizabeth loves music and it fills her well. Yes, there's going to be there's some commonalities, which is why I can like lay out the ingredients for you and be like, choose any of these in any quantity you choose. I guarantee you a delicious recipe. Music, time in nature, morning pages, which we'll talk more about today, an artist date. There's just some really, really common threads that are going to help us. And it's really, really raining. I've got to close that window. My goodness. We're in Colombia, and it, just decides to really rain a couple of times a year. So we're in it. All right. The reason I love spending time doing this is because when women talk about what they have to share, when women who are ready to write a book or share a story are in that space, there is something so amazingly energetic that I can't get enough of it. And so I'm really excited to have had this opportunity this week to be sharing with you, because the way that you're all showing up and the way that these connections and conversations are happening is just so, that's the stuff, right? And when yesterday we were talking about filling your well, and part of the recipe being like, how do you have enough energy? How do you structure your life so you have the quiet and the time that you need to process your experience, to digest what it is that you have to say and find the lessons that you've lived enough to share them with someone else? How do we do that? And it's not just cram shit in the well. That well, like we said at the very end last night, it has to be a container that holds. So how do you create a safe container, one that doesn't have as many leaks as you're putting things in? one of the first activities I usually do with the women in Women's Circle is to really draw your energetic container. And you're welcome to do this exercise later on your own time, but like draw your container. Is it a bucket? Is it a margarita glass? Is it a bathtub? Is it a vase or a vase? What shape is your container? Take a quick snapshot. How full is your container at that moment? And then we draw like, what are the fillers? I'm gonna use this hand so I don't keep getting in my shadow. What are the things that fill your container? And what are the ways that you share your energy and your love? It's sometimes the things that fill you are how we share. And so women in particular, and I used to do this with the yoga teachers at the yoga studio that I ran, it's like, well, teaching yoga class is how I fill my container, and yet it is also how I give energy to other people. So really paying attention to that dynamic. But then the most important part for a lot of us was really, what are the cracks? Where are the leaks draining from your energetic container? They do not have to be there, and they're not serving you, and they're not serving anybody, right? That conversation that you haven't had, that you think about all the time, that bill that you just don't want to pay, that phone call that you need to make to the credit card company or whatever, that stuff that nobody wants to think about, nobody wants to talk about. But if we leave that stuff lingering, it is just a constant drip, drip, drip leaking from our container. So I usually spend a lot more time on this activity, but I just wanted to give that to you really quickly to think about your creative container. If you don't have time and space to yourself, it's going to be really hard to do and have that inspiration that we were talking about yesterday. Doesn't matter how many well-filling activities you do, if the leaks are still there, you're just filling a sieve. And I speak about that because I lived it for a long time. And so it was very much my own sieve, and I'm not calling anybody out. Although, if this sounds familiar, let's take some time and plug those holes. And this is where your masculine energy, your like provide and protect, your get shit doneness is going to be super, super helpful. You can look at your schedule, you can look at your responsibilities and be like, what's got to go? Who else can help? How do we like make this different? If you need help with that specific task, reach out to me, let me know. I have some resources for you. So that's like, if we're cooking our recipe for success, that's your pot, okay? If your pot doesn't hold, all the ingredients in the world aren't going to do you any good, okay? So you need a pot that doesn't have holes in it. Very few people cook in colanders or sieves, because I don't recommend it. Try to imagine making a soup in a sieve. It's just not going to happen. So today we're really going to look at how we prime the pump. And if you don't know what this metaphor is, it is now a metaphor because nobody pumps their water by hand. But we used to all pump water by hand. If you've ever seen an old movie or lived in an old house, the water pump, it was like pressure fed. You'd have a well and a pipe that went down, and you'd have the tube, and you'd have to pump, pump, pump before the water came out, because it takes a while for the suction to get the water to the top. And I really like that image, because there are going to be things, but a lot of the things that we've been doing here are priming the pump. Learning how to recognize and navigate your energetic and logistical blocks is absolutely priming the pump, because what we're going to get into tomorrow, and what I'm hoping for everyone here, is that you'll have these sort of cyclical fluxes where you'll have the time, you'll have the space, you'll have the energy, you'll have the inspiration, you'll have all the ingredients in front of you, you'll have a container that holds, and then that shit is just going to pour out of you, and it is going to come smooth and easy, and it maybe even grabs you by the throat and like, we are telling this right now. But you do the thing that you can do, because you can't say, hey, inspiration, could you show up at 7 p.m. on Thursday? It doesn't work like that. It does work that if you clear the space and if you do the other stuff, like we said earlier, 80% of writing is not writing. But if you were doing this preparation, if you are taking the time and you're listening to the music and you're structuring your life and you're recognizing your cyclical flows and you are facing down your fears and your doubts when they come, then inspiration is you've cleared the blockages, you've cleared the channel so that it can just come through you. Okay. Um, right. Exactly. But we live, Elizabeth, we live in this world where everything is scheduled and there's like maybe 5 minutes between events. I mean, I have a Calendly link that says like, do you want to allow 5 minutes between events? I'm like, are you kidding me? Can I allow like 35 minutes between events? Because 5 minutes gives me about enough time to actually get off the phone call, figure out who the hell I am, and be on another phone call. I don't want 5 minutes between things, but we're living in this very scheduled one thing after another after another. And for those of us, all of us who are here, we're here to be on it, like we're here to create. And the same way, like being pregnant, um, when you're literally pregnant, it's all happening. But the way that we used to run things of like, I'm going to do it this way on this day at this time, that is not the case. And all the control that we thought we had over things doesn't really happen that way. But again, being pregnant, you can rest, you can eat well, you can do these other things that allow just the absolute natural process to occur. And get this, write this down. Creation is a completely natural, normal, healthy process. And when we're struggling with it, Anneli, you made it. Hi, my love. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for saying hi. This is the most natural process. But what's happening is that we're living in this sort of unnatural rhythm. So what we're going to do about priming this pump is doing all the setup so that we can effectively and efficiently, and that does not mean scheduled on a certain day at a certain time, but it does mean like naturally we can effectively and efficiently create, because on day 2 we dealt with our blocks and we know how to deal with the next one because there's going to be another one. And then we can create these spaces that are safe containers for us to stew in our own juices and that are in like inspiration invitations. We can't quite schedule it in, but we can invite it. And I think that's the distinction. Yesterday, I shared a little bit about how last year, and this, our mental map about how things happen determines how we get to live them. So if you have a story that you're attached to, that writing a book or writing your story is hard and or it's going to take a long time, then that is what you are creating, and that is the truth that you will live. You will be right. Whatever you believe, you are right. Last night I shared that last year, first year of a global pandemic, I published 5 books. 3 of them were collaborative efforts and 2 of them are solo projects. And I published them myself, I wrote them myself, and I learned how to publish them last year. So I now have a totally different concept. I have a mind map that says, a mental map that says I can write a book and publish it in 3 months. I can. If I want it to take longer than that, I absolutely can take more time, but I've shifted the story. And the reason I share that again is, and the reason Red Thread Publishing is doing what we're doing, is because it is that missing piece of empowerment for women where we really get to accelerate our growth, accelerate our emotional, personal, spiritual growth. But also when we're writing a story and we're sharing it with the world, it's accelerating our professional growth. And then it amplifies our impact, where I'm one person and I can talk to you and I can go to the coffee shop and I can talk to 5 people. I'm still limited. I'm one person. But what's happened as a result of writing these books, a couple days ago, I had a call with a woman in Australia who is the neighbor of the mother of a friend of mine who happened to have read my book. And it like trickled down, and she called me and she's like, I've been reading your book. I've read it twice. My coworkers ask me, how is dating yourself going? It's a whole thing that our whole community is getting into. So that impact is amplified. There's no way I would have ever probably known that woman or be able to reach that woman or offer her any damn thing without my book, but now it's out there and it's reaching people well beyond like my human, this person to person impact, right? Um, yeah, say that again. Unnatural rhythm. I'm a little slow on the uptake in the comments, by the way, because I'm just in my groove. But it's so true. We are living, we're making it familiar, but it doesn't make it natural and it doesn't make it comfortable. We're living in this like incessant rhythm. And again, I promise not to tell you the way to do things because I know that your way is going to be different than my way and it's going to be different than her way. But when you find your natural rhythm and then you embrace the shit out of that, the way I shared yesterday about the productive and receptive flux that I went through, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to write and create and teach, and I'm all out there. And then I'm like, don't want to talk to anybody, don't want to think about anything. I need to pull it back. That was my natural flux and flow. Um, so so figuring out that rhythm so that, because here's the goal, going back to the goal, is to accelerate your personal growth, your professional growth, and really, really amplify who you can reach. Because what changed for me last year, and the reason I'm sharing some of my own process, is because the way that I saw myself as a result of writing and publishing these books fundamentally changed. And the way other people see me now also changed. Oh, you're a published author. Oh, you made a bestseller list? That's cool, right? And that just is like, oh, am I still the same person? Do I still fart? Yep, all the above. But there's also like a fundamental change, and it really opens up what is possible, what I believe is possible, what I believe I'm capable of, and that just really amplifies that. And so this is what I'm offering to women because this is what we're hungry for. We are so capable, and the whole world is hungry for the stories that we haven't yet shared. And so that's what we're doing. Couple of things. I want to share a couple of concepts, really tangible things. Otherwise, I could just probably talk this whole time. And I want to give you a few really, really strong things to play with. So one of my core trainings with all of my clients in my women's circle, always, 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 is micro shifts. That from where we are to where we want to go, when especially if like where we want to go feels big, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, and just that alone can delay our progress. And so instead of trying to become a best-selling author, it sounds really terrifying when you haven't done it and seems really impossible until you try, is to take the smallest piece. Okay, what is the smallest, not just a small step, but like the smallest step. Okay, something that is so doable that you're like, oh, yeah, I can do that in my sleep. But once I've done it today, then I can say, oh, I did it. And now I'm successful because now I have the motivation to do that same thing again tomorrow. And most of success is actually just doing the small stuff over and over again. So the micro shift and this idea of a micro shift. So in your workbook, there's a calendar. It's just like a 1 week calendar. It could be this coming week. What are some tiny, tiny, insignificant, they're insignificant things that you're willing to commit to and say that, and then actually do them so that you are that much closer to your goal. If you're watching this live and you can think of a thing, drop it in the comments. If you're watching the replay, tell us later. But this is really a critical thing of like, what's the small stuff that you're going to do so that you're actually growing, okay? And for each person, that small stuff is different. Some examples in the past of women that I've worked with is like, I'm going to make that phone call that I've been meaning to make. I'm going to send that email that I have really been thinking about for 3 months, okay? Or today I'm going to draft the email and tomorrow I'm going to send the email, okay? I'm going to spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes today and I'm going to spend 5 minutes tomorrow. And that, it seems insignificant, but if it's taken some time, there's something there. But once you do it, then it's done, right? Okay? And it has ripple effects and it has growing amplitude. When you do the little stuff, it starts freeing that space and that energy. We were talking about your energetic container that has all these leaks. Those micro shifts, the small stuff, starts patching some of those leaks or gives you the energy you need to patch the bigger leaks so that you can get there. Like, it's all a process. So the micro shift is what your calendar is for. What is the smallest stuff that you can do in your micro shifts? And have that in context of, where am I in my creative, productive cycle? Okay. That's always rest, digest, assess, which is really similar to what I teach in my women's circle, which is grounding, like, who am I? Aligning, where am I going? Agency, what am I going to do about it? This is where the micro shifts come in. And then integration. It's like, who am I? What do I want? What am I doing about it? What have I learned from this process? Repeat, right? It seems super simple, and everybody who hears it's like, oh, yeah. Except we don't practice it. And if when we're not really, really devotedly practicing that stuff, it slips by the wayside. So thinking about where you are in your own stage of development, what are you going to commit to over this next week? What are those small things? Write them down in the comments if you're willing to share. Write them down in your workbook, and then do them. And do them so that you can feel good about it, okay? Do them so you can do the next thing the next day and celebrate every damn day. If you make a list that has like 35 things on it about what you're going to do tomorrow, guess what? You're going to fail, and then you're going to feel shit about it. And then you're going to spend most of your energy feeling shit about your failures. So let's cut that out. Set a small task that is doable. It's going to stretch you, but it's doable so that it gets done. Okay, I'm going to send that email. I'm going to follow up with this person. I'm going to do this thing. There's a bunch of you jumping on. That's super great. Thank you for joining us. Drop in the comments. Just say who you are, where you're coming in from, and we'll go from there. I promised to talk about the morning pages, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to give you one more thing to think about. But as we're talking about sort of where you are in the process, I just wanted to remind you of something I mentioned yesterday, why I use the moon phases as a template for our creative process. Because the moon, going back to Annalie's message of like, yeah, we're living this unnatural rhythm. The moon is an external and constant reminder of the fluidity of life, the changing nature. Last week, Elizabeth, you were on our sort of reinvention webinar, and we were really talking about this. The moon is different every single day, except it's always there, right? What if your writing practice were like the moon, and that it was consistently, fluidly changing, but always there, okay? And that your creative process was like the moon. This is why, and so next whole month, I'm teaching this system, this creative writing system, of how to really harness our natural changing feminine nature, looking at the phases of the moon and how those phases can serve as a system to really help you do the resting, do the planning, do the actual action of the writing, but that you've really primed the pump to get there. And then the last phase of your writing process, like the moon, is the revising, the editing, the trimming all of that out, okay? Because the moon phases energetically, just like your menstrual cycle energetically. There's some like, I wrote this whole book, How Change Really Happens, looking at the world and being like, every example from microorganisms to solar systems behave a certain way, and yet we humans are pretending to operate that we can operate with another set of laws. Guess what? We can't. How about we just change the way that change is meant to really happen? So I'm using the moon and our menstrual cycle and the seasons as reminders of how to create. And if 80% of writing is not writing, then what is that? It's what we've talked about. It's filling your well. It's patching those leaks. It's priming the pump. It's being creative, okay? It's being curious and sensuous out in the world. It's creating the structures for you to have that space for inspiration to arrive. That's the 80% of writing that's not writing. But if you're not doing that 80% for yourself, how do you think that other 20% is going to show up? Is it going to be able to? Because you haven't cleared a damn minute in your life or in your heart or even on your hard drive. If there's not a file that's like my goddamn book, then there's no space for it. Okay. I do get a little feisty when I get all riled up and talk about this stuff. So that's coming, and I'll tell you more about that tomorrow. But another thing, when it comes to priming the pump, one thing I've really noticed. Yay. Okay, I'm reading, but I want to get to this really quickly. One thing I've noticed is that it's so easy to both get really excited about a creation project and then to tell everybody about it. And two things happen in my experience when I tell people, oh, I'm writing a book or I'm creating this thing. Two things happen. The first one is all of my well-meaning friends are like, oh, really? Are you sure? That seems like it's going to be hard work. Whatever their well-meaning intention is, pours water on my fire. Okay. And I'm like, ooh, I don't feel so good about this project anymore. And then I begin to doubt myself and blah, 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 blah. So that's one thing when I share prematurely about, even honestly, opening this publishing company. I shared with a friend, and his first response was like, oh, well, here's all the reasons why that's a bad idea. I was like, oh, thanks for the support. I really appreciate it. But we managed to get through that because I was really aware of this concept. The second thing that happens is if you have somebody who's willing to hear you out, especially when it comes to like a story idea or any sort of creative project, if you tell someone everything that you're thinking of writing or saying or singing or doing, when it comes time to actually get it down, the inspiration's gone because you just poured it out your mouth to this person, which is fine, except when it comes down to writing it, then it's gone. Okay. And so you have not, this is the concept I want you to write down is called contained exposure. And I got this concept from Lisa Lister, who's incredible. She really is, she's like the menstrual goddess. And she talks about the cycles and using our natural feminine energies. So contained exposure, when I think about it, is like guard those seeds until they have deep, deep roots. Okay. Whether it's a book, it's just your idea, maybe it's a business, it's just like a little tiny dream, right? It's the seed that is just starting and it's fragile. And if somebody's like, oh, are you sure? And they don't even mean it badly. They really don't. They're probably trying to keep you from being disappointed, yada, yada, yada. But then they're like, oh, that tiny little dream of yours. And you're like, oh, my dream. And then maybe it doesn't grow. Or maybe you put it aside for another year. And that shit's not gonna, like, we're not doing that anymore. So as you're thinking about this, that doesn't mean don't tell anybody, but I want you to think about this idea of contained exposure of like, if you have a baby little dream sprout, who do you share it with? There'll be a time to scream it from the mountaintops and plaster the internet with it, but the very beginning stage is not that stage. Okay. So when you're priming the pump and you're like building this creative container that's just going to have build and build and build and build, it's probably not the time just to be like, oh yeah, guess what? I'm going to publish a book in a month or this year or whatever, because then everybody's going to have something to say about it. Especially if they have a book that they want to write and they're going to tell you their sob story, and then it's just going to like pour problems on you. So we're going to contain exposure. I want you to play with this idea as a tool. Today, I'm just like laying out all the ingredients and I just want you to pick and play with them. So micro shifts, contained exposure, really using different, like identifying your own creative cycle. What is your creative rhythm? Okay. And it's hard. I will acknowledge, I'm not going to pretend that we don't have jobs and deadlines and kids that need to eat and like things in our lives that are very much on schedules and very much time consuming. I'm not going to say that that's not a thing. Um, However, I believe in each of us, I believe in each of you enough to say, and yet we can still make it happen. My business coach called me out on some things recently, and because I am a single parent and I'm trying to do a million things, and I say, like, I have this kid at home all afternoon. She said, yeah, I did too, and here's a strategy. Because the people around us, we have trained them how to be. Okay, so if we've trained them to interrupt us every 20 minutes, that's how they will be. If we train them to play independently, because, for example, my 6 year old gets a bag, a little paper bag full of stickers and a new marker and a piece of Play Doh, that girl can play and create and draw me an amazing three-dimensional picture and play for 45 minutes, and then she can listen to an audiobook for an hour and a half, and then something else can happen and she gets a snack by herself because she's old enough now. Like, it took me a bit, but the energy that went into the shifting and the training, sort of the retraining of the people in my life to allow me the space that I needed is really, really important. And so we keep coming back to this masculine energy of providing and protecting for your creative space, setting up those systems and teaching those practices and those boundaries to the people in your life is critical. Okay, people will treat you the way you let them treat you, and if you need something to change, the very beginning can be a little bit rough, but again, this is where the micro shifts come. Okay, so it can be small shifts so that there's not a huge blow up, but it is possible to make really, really dramatic changes in your life so that you can have a 4 hour work block a couple of times a week. It's possible. Again, anytime I'm sharing anything and you're like, yeah, that sounds really nice, I have no idea how to make that happen for myself, let me know, because this is my glory, like this kind of problem solving for people. And it's quite often when we're in it, we cannot see a way out. All we need is somebody to really listen and say, oh, what if you try this way? And then, oh, there you go, I'll try it. Okay. And a lot can ease up in terms of helping create that container. But recognize that I'm already over time. But I'm going to take 3 more minutes, and then I am going to wrap up to respect your time and my time. Morning pages, I've kept on hinting about it. Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way, incredible 12-week artistic practice. It is very intense, just forewarning. There's a couple of little snippets I took from it that I really loved. And the morning pages is something that I've practiced on and off for years since I intensely did The Artist's Way. Morning pages is a practice every day. I re-upped and I committed to this in April. I said every day I'm going to write 3 handwritten pages in total scrawl. Okay, there are just stream of consciousness. This is journal pages that no one, I promise you, no one will ever read. Not even me, because that's not the point. The morning pages is that like wiping the slate clean, because your head, my darling, your brain is always cluttered with random shit. Okay, it's like a purse that has old receipts and gum wrappers and just junk in there that doesn't need to be in there. And when we're looking for like inviting inspiration, why would inspiration want to come into a space like that? I don't like to be in a space like that, right? When you have a workspace, you want your workspace to be clear. Your brain is your workspace, and inspiration is not going to want to come into a cluttered purse. So the morning pages for me is just like whatever's on the top of my mind and the things that I've been thinking about over and over and over and over and over again. I got super geeky about neuroscience the other day. I'm going to do it again. We have like 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And it's something like 80% of them are exactly the same thoughts that you had yesterday. And so taking the morning pages is a really incredible way both to become hyper aware of yourself and the thoughts that you're having. So you can be like, do I really think that? Do I really feel that? Ooh, maybe I don't need to do that anymore. I'm going to put it on the page and get it out. But it also just helps filter the way I describe it in Women's Circle when we do morning pages. It's really the digestive process of all the millions of things that we're ingesting mentally every day. Okay, we are ingesting a million articles and blogs and ideas and thoughts and quotes and conversations with people and recipes and just bleh. Okay, we're full. But if our brain has not taken a moment to digest, then it's just undigested and just sort of rotting in there. And forgive the very graphic image. If you put that much food in your mouth and you never pooped, you would feel really, really uncomfortable. And so the morning pages I think of as like mental poop. It is your brain dump. It is nothing, very rarely is it anything treasurable, but occasionally, once you're in the habit and your hand is flowing, inspiration's like, oh, this channel's clearing out. Let me come through. And so morning pages is just an incredible practice where I shared yesterday. It's where I wrestle with my doubts and my fears. It's where sometimes inspiration comes through, but it's also where I practice my imperfectness. Okay. Writing does not come out print worthy the first time. And so this is just another thing that I think goes with hopes and fears, but also will help clear the channel. Your objective, my dear, when we're unleashing your story is to get out a shitty first draft. Get it out bad, okay? And I'm going to go much more into tomorrow how I wrote, which one? I wrote this book the first time in a 4-day weekend as a single parent. I did the process that I'm going to share in my course next month. I used the moon, I worked with my menstrual cycle, and I kid you not, how many pages is it? It's like 150 pages. I wrote a good 30,000 words in 4 days because I had done all the other stuff. I had done some outlining. I knew what I wanted to talk about, and I was just ready. Okay. So that for me is the hope. Oops, I should turn that light back on. It's possible. I guess it's time to get offline. It's possible to have it flow. And the reason I'm spending all this week on all of this preparatory stuff is to get you into a space to let it flow. Okay. So that but the first draft comes out dirty. I'm going to go into that tomorrow. I'm not going to give you all the spoilers now. Share any ideas you have in the comments. If you're looking for any more resources, let me know. Share your micro shifts, and I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you for your extra time. I usually try to really wrap it up. I kept you over 7 minutes and 40 seconds. So extra love to you. Have a beautiful night, and I'll see you for day 5 tomorrow.